Hello and welcome back to my real-time strategy in Unity tutorial. Today we're going to be expanding on our AI again, so we can gather resources, and then we're looking a little bit into what to do if we can't meet the criteria for an action. So, say if we want to gather resources but we don't have a storehouse, we'd have to develop a way to all right, build a storehouse, then you can go gather resources. So first off, let's give you a quick demo of it all in action. So if I press I, it'll tell the AI to start gathering resources. And as you'll see, they are currently building a storehouse. And we've got a few new action queues here. And while that's building it, they'll then go and build a farm. And finally, they will go and gather resources. And you'll see in the faction resources script on the right side of the screen that once they get to the storehouse, which is this building here, it will increase. And I shouldn't have clicked off of that, but I will. Faction controller. But yeah, you'll see that the stone is now higher, and I believe the iron will increase next. Yep, the iron's gone up to 1500 there. Next, they will search for gold, I believe. Yep, they're going to that gold rock. And once they've got the gold, they will go back and store in the storehouse. Don't worry about these errors. These are just my way of being lazy. So saying that it's created paths in the debug log error because I had loads of stuff appearing in there, which is very bad practice, but whatever. Finally, you can see that they are on the food storage. But since this is the last one, it will loop repeatedly. I don't know why it's stuck, but whatever. Okay. Let's go see how this was done. Okay, so first off, I'm just going to go over some of the changes I made to existing code. Zoom in? No. View. Sorry. Zoom in. Or whatever. Basically, yeah, I added another virtual string to the decision. This is end result, and basically, this is just going to pass. It passes back to whatever calls it what the decision you're making will eventually lead to once it's completed. So, say if a building would be constructed, units, something like that. So just pass that back basically. What else? I made some changes to the forest and rocky tiles. So basically, it will, once the resource object is created, it will set the transform of that resource object to be the tile it was created on. This is just to make it neater in the hierarchy. So you don't have a giant list; they're all tucked away under the respective tile that they're on. So that's good. Also, for the faction resources script, which is the basically resources for each individual faction, I added basically identical methods to the player resources script in the resource manager, which has a resource check. So you pass in a string and a resource, and it'll check if you have a sufficient amount to build of that resource, basically. So checks for food, wood, stone, gold. You can also pass in alter values, increase, decrease, stuff like that. They are just like copied and pasted from here. That's it. We just need another version of them. So those were the changes. Now onto the new code. Okay, so first off, we have a new list called In Progress Decisions. This is basically a list that stores all the decisions that have been successfully executed by the decision queue and are being done by workers or something. So say gathering resources or building buildings or whatever. If it's been placed and like there's workers trying to go to it, then they will be in that in progress decisions. And the main use of this list is to check if we are already doing an action to make sure that we don't repeatedly add an action because it's a requirement of some kind of another action. So say if we were gathering resources, but we wanted to say if we were gathering resources and we didn't have a storehouse, So we wouldn't want to add a decision to gather to build a storehouse each frame. So we'd add the one. We'd add it once, decision to build a storehouse to the decision queue, and then that would execute. Since we're not checking for resources at the moment, it would successfully execute and be placed in the in progress decisions. Now, while the storehouse was being built, we still don't have a storehouse, so each time a decision gather resource would execute, it'd fail. So it would call the gather resource, but since it's in, we can pass since it's in this in progress decisions list, it will return true that we're trying to do the action. So it won't repeatedly add it, and we'll only get one storehouse out of it. And it also checks the decision queue just in case. So yeah, and it takes just a string which is from the end result. This is a virtual string. You can just override it in the decision build buildings. We just send back the building type. Yeah. What else? And basically we can set a decision in progress here, which is basically just called from the decision script when they're executed successfully. So it doesn't get called from here, I don't think. No. Okay, so the second new list we've added is a decisions on hold list. This is basically where decisions get put when we can't execute them for whatever reason. So, say, for gathering resources, if we don't have enough, or we don't have a storehouse or a farm or something like that, then we'll say, all right, we want to put this decision on hold until we meet the criteria that the decision requires. So, I'll just find it. So, if basically, first change, we'll basically check each time the decision queue reaches 0, so when it's not got anything to do, it will call unpaused decisions if there are decisions on hold. What that does, it gets all the decisions that are paused and adds them back to the decision queue to check if the criteria has been met yet, to see if they can be executed, and it'll clear the existing list. But if the condition can't be met, it'll just get added straight back to the paused decision list through this method, which basically just gets the first element in the decision queue and pauses that, because that will be the same as decision to pause, which passed in, and then it removes it from the decision queue. I don't think I need the decision to pause, do I? Oh yeah. No, sorry, I used comparison. So yeah, so if the two are the same, we'll add the first decision to decisions on hold and then remove it from the decision queue. And that basically makes sure that even if we can't do an action, we're not going to forget about it. We're going to go back to it as soon as we've done the actions or the decisions that are needed to perform it. Okay, so we've also added a new decision called gather resources. Basically just takes a string, and these are just this adds the game object to this adds the script of decision gather resources to this game object and initializes the values and adds it to the decision queue. But the actual script basically takes the faction identifier, so that's just a way of referencing the various scripts in the factions, like I explained before in the previous episode. And the script of the resource type, so that'd be just what you want to find. So in this case, wood, stone, iron, gold, food. Yeah. And first off, we got on the do action, we actually implement the check, can we perform action? We're checking basically what kind of criteria we need to meet to perform this action. So in the case of gathering resources, if we're gathering food, first off, there needs to be food on the map, so that's what this checks. So if it can't find any kind of resource of food on the map, it'll return null, so saying, all right, we can't do that. But if there is food on the map, we need to make sure that, one, we have a storehouse that we can put it in, and two, that we actually own a farm, so we don't want to be going across the map to some other faction's farm to steal their food, because then they'll just kill us, and that's not fun. So basically, if either of these conditions are true, so if we don't have a storehouse or farm, then we return false and say, all right, we can't perform the action yet, we've got to meet some criteria. Otherwise, we return true. Likewise, for resources that aren't food, we do the same. We check for an instance of the resource existing on the map. Then we return true. Sorry. So then we check for a storehouse, and then if both these conditions are met, we return true. Otherwise, if there isn't a resource or there isn't a storehouse, we return false. And this is where it sort of changes. So if we can perform the action, we basically just get all the workers, and we give them a AI gather resource script. We pass in the resource to gather and the position of the worker, and we add it to their unit master class actions queue. And then we set the decision in progress of this decision, this instance of the decision. But if we can't perform the action, we call on can't perform action. So basically what this does is it runs through all the criteria that we can possibly need to meet. So say if we're not already trying to build a storehouse in some capacity, and we don't actually have a storehouse at all, then we will add the decision to build a building storehouse to the decision queue. Also, if we're trying to gather food, if we don't have a farm and there isn't any food, if we aren't trying to build a farm and we don't already own a farm, we say, all right, build a farm as well, which is why you saw in the video, you saw the AI built the farm and the storehouse and then went to gather the resources, because it was saying, all right, we can't do these decisions because we don't have the prerequisites. So they went to do these first, then they went and got the resources. And then it pauses the decision just until the next iteration to try and see, all right, can we do this? So on, so on. And likewise, for the end result, it just returns the string of resources to gather. So it will return wood, food, whatever you're trying to gather with resource. Yeah. Okay, so again, we've got an AI gather resource script. This is just an action basically for AI. Similar to the player's action AI worker gather resource script, but a few key differences. One, it has to identify the resource itself rather than get it from the selection manager or wherever I put it. I'm not quite sure I remember, but whatever. Basically what this does is it gets the nearest instance of the resource from the worker's position of the resource type, so wood, food, whatever. If it can't find it, it will just break the loop. So it'll say, all right, we don't want to do anything. It'll just stop and go on to the next action. Otherwise, it will say, all right, the position of the resource is the game object's transformed that position. And then we've got the normal assigning of the storehouse, but instead of using the player's building store, we use the my faction, not my buildings.getNearest building type storehouse. And we get the my faction, which is just a faction script, by looking at the faction identifier on the worker that's trying to build it. So each of the workers, when they're built, has one of these faction identifiers that you may have seen in the previous episode. That just contains references to the buildings, units, stuff like that in the faction. And I think all this code is identical to the gathering resources stuff for the player's workers. Basically just moves them to the resource, stays at the resource for 5 seconds, and then moves to the storehouse and repeats that cycle endlessly until they have another action in the queue to do. And I just have a little debug here to say that the AI is finished. And finally, the last little change to the player's gather resource is that we add the resources to myfaction.myresources instead of the player's one. To make sure that I'm just sending the resource type and the amount. So I just got it as a default of 100, but you could code in more advanced, like depending on the size of the rock. Who knows? And yeah, I think that's it. So let's just go and have another demo, shall we? Okay. So if I press I, it will start the AI going on building stuff. Where are they? Here they are. So you can see that these AI They have the actions of building buildings, but not the gathered resources yet, because the faction can't do it. But as you can see now, since they have a storehouse, 4 of them have been successfully met, because they can't have a storehouse. But since we don't have a farm, we can't gather food yet. I think as this farm is built here, you'll be able to see that another one gets added. And yep, now we have 5 gather resources, and the last one will be for food, but we've got iron, stone, wood, gold, stuff like that. And if we just look, they've gone to the gold first. They gather the resource. They return to the faction storehouse here. If you can see the mouse, hope so. But yeah, you'll see they return to there. Then they move on to the next resource, which is wood. So they go into a tree. All at the same tree, apparently. They go back to the storehouse. Now they go to gather stone from the nearest stone. Return to the storehouse, and you get the picture. So yeah, I'll just show you again that in the faction controller, these resources are increasing. So they got 1500, 1500, 1500, but then the iron will increase this one, and then they'll go and gather food. So yeah, I don't know why they go to that one. Oh well. So yeah, so cheers for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, all that shit. You know, it's all good. What else? I've been working on Loud or Quiet. I was meant to be working on arcade mode, but it instead turned into some of a procedurally generated roguelike kind of mode thing, so that might get shown up in a few weeks. But I am currently in the middle of university grade deciding exams. I've got one tomorrow on software architectures and one in a week's time on artificial intelligence. So that'll be fun. And then, so there might not be a video next week, or if there is, it might be late because I'll be revising for AI, which I am not going to do well on. But hopefully I'll be able to balance it out because I've done quite well on some of the courseworks, so that's good. What else? Yeah, so go check out Loud or Quiet. Again, Maker Station is my procedurally generated roguelike I made for my coursework this year. I've not got a grade on that, so I'll be sure to mention it at some point when I do. Yeah, I might go back to that actually, because the execution was a bit off. You know, I've learnt a bit that I could use to make it better. Yeah, but overall the groundwork was there. I quite liked it. Again, what else have I done? Not much aside from that procedurally generated Loud or Quiet stuff. So that'll be a new mode that I'll be testing out in a future update. Maybe, I think it's 1.7 now actually. That'll be the next one. 2 new game modes. Roguelike mode and arcade mode, hopefully, which will be out in, I want to say June-ish? Maybe. I don't know. Depends how much I revise and how much work I can get done after, because I'm trying to get a passport to go to Germany. That'll be fun. Alright, sorry for rambling, but yeah, you can see that they're repeatedly gathering the food. Bye.